But the whole thing is designed to move you from where you are very dramatically to a different place, right? Because it's plucking you out of your life. It's plucking you out of your life, and then you're doing this practice more intensively than you ever did it before, getting more understanding about it than you ever did it before. Practicing it in more ways than you ever did before, because if you're up there doing this, everything you do is Zen. Everything you do is meditation. And the situation is designed for that. It's silent. There's no speaking for the 7 days. You're served wonderful, pure vegetarian food. It's a beautiful environment to be in. And so all day long, you're either meditating, doing walking meditation. When you're working, you're being attentive to what you're doing. You're being awake and alive. Same thing when you're eating. Everything is done very ritualistically. Everybody gets a bowl. You keep the same bowl all week. It's a very intense experience that will be so radically different than your ordinary life, and so radically different than being the person that you typically are. There's no way after that you could come back and have not experienced a dramatic shift or a dramatic change in the way life is and the way you are. But it takes audacity, to jump off a cliff. That's to do something like that is like just jumping off a cliff. Not worrying about what your mind says about it. You can do it. It's not even a challenge physically. Do you know what I mean? Unless you're an invalid. It's not even a challenge physically. So what's the mind complaining about? No, the mind's saying, oh no, meditation that long? Oh wow, no way. See, you want to confront that. That's what you want to confront more than anything else. Whenever the mind is insisting that you not do something, and when you look at what it's insisting that you not do, and you can see two things. One is it's not going to hurt you, and two, it has a tremendous potential to transform you and have you experience your life completely differently. And so if you look at that and you see that, what's the complaining all about? What's the mind doing? Why is there such a dramatic no? Why is there such a dramatic resistance to behaving in a way that promotes you being awake and happy? Why? What is that? And if you go to a retreat like this and you do sit there, you'll get to be with the answer to that question. You'll get to be with the answer to that question, because that same voice that said why will be there with you as you sit silently in the meditation hall, saying, how much longer is this going to take? My back hurts. I hope the food is better than it was this morning. I couldn't sleep last night. I don't like this. You get to sit with that for 7 days. And as you sit with that for 7 days, and you get the support that you're being given to practice, that voice in your head starts to lose two things. It starts to lose its ability to capture your attention, right? And it starts to lose its validity as being you. It starts losing its ability to capture your attention, and it starts losing its validity as being you. So gradually, during the week, you part company with the reality that you've been considering to be you that's not actually true. Gradually during the week, you start to part company with that, and you start to realize, wait a minute, you find yourself sitting in the meditation hall 4:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden, because you've been paying attention to the breath and staying out of trouble, because you've been paying attention to the breath and staying out of your head, staying out of the mind, all of a sudden you realize, this is a beautiful place. I hear the birds. I hear the birds singing. I hear the wind rustling the leaves. And it really is a beautiful place. But then what you realize is, this is the first time I've heard this. I've been so involved with the voice in my head that I have not been here experiencing where I am and what's happening here. It's for some people it's a shock. For some people, it's a big shock to find out that you haven't been in your own life. That's a hell of a shock, isn't it, when you think about it? And you wouldn't know that was true unless something happened that broke through the programming, right? broke through the programming, and created enough of a gap in the programming that you could actually be present to what's happening. To be present to the birds singing, to be present to the teacher, to be present to the other students there, to be present to the simplicity and the beauty of living in this very simple way. So, that's something that I'm going to start throwing out there more and see if I can get any bites. See if anybody's willing to be, that committed to waking up and realizing the truth.
For some people, don't you think it might be easier to do a gradual thing where locally there's many retreats for 1 day or 2 days? I've done a number of them.
Yeah,
Would that be a easier way of getting into it?
Well, you could say that. I mean, when I went to do this retreat, the teacher said to some of the people that were new there, usually we recommend that you do a 2-day retreat or a one day thing before you do this, right? But he said it's actually better that you don't. So the idea is, they recommend that, but they only recommend that so that they can give cookies to the mind. They only recommend that so that they could feed the mind some stuff, about how to do this, gradually go into the water to get into the deep end. That's one way to do it. I personally don't recommend it. I recommend going around and jumping in the deep end of the pool. Why? Because there is no threat there. You're afraid of nothing. You're afraid of something that is probably more beneficial to your existence and more beneficial to your well-being than anything you've ever done in your life, you see, and you're afraid of it. So my recommendation, you can do that gradual business. That's how people live, isn't it? People live gradually. I don't want to go too fast. It might be too much for me. As if you're some kind of weakling, you know what I mean? Human beings are very strong, because what you got behind you that has infinite power and strength is the awareness itself. Even the physical body. So you have the awareness itself, which is infinite and very strong, the spirit, so to speak, and then you have the body, which is physical, but even the human body is an amazingly creative and strong organism, isn't it? If you stop to think about what's going on in your body in one single day, that is beyond your comprehension, completely beyond your comprehension. It's an amazingly powerful organism, the human body. So when you pair that up with the infinitely powerful consciousness, what's all this complaining about? What's all this fearful behavior about? It's a collective fear. It's a collective fear. You better be careful. Isn't that how human beings live? You better be careful. Do things slowly. Don't go too fast. It might be too much. So, but I understand that. And if you were to say to me, I hear what you're saying, but for me, I can't get around it. The only way I could go to something like that is I'd have to go to something first that was less intense. Okay, if that's the only way you can do it, then do that. Then do that. At least do that. And the reason I'm saying these things is because this, at some point, and you guys, by this time, I think you guys probably understand this, right? At some point, you have to deal with the fact that to get out of the situation you're in is something that you're going to have to you're going to have to take some dramatic actions, right? You've been practicing being crazy for decades and decades. To come out of that craziness, you're going to have to take some dramatic actions, like to come out of that trance, to shake that trance off. It's not something that's going to happen by itself. You can do it in your everyday, ordinary life the way you're practicing now, and that will produce benefits. People have talked about that here, right? But then on the other hand, we're talking about this possibility of enlightenment, this possibility of being fully realized. And if that is a real possibility, given the suffering that goes on for us, if that is a real possibility, why wouldn't you go after that? That's why when I work with people in my psychotherapy practice these days, regardless of what the complaint is that you bring to me, I always say the same thing. Let's direct our energy and our attention to you fulfilling the potential you have for well-being. Let's direct all of our energy and attention to the potential you have for well-being. If we succeed, whatever your complaints were will clear up. Isn't it true? Isn't it true? If you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you have any other kinds of issues that show up in relationship and so forth, if you have addiction issues, whatever the case may be, if you learn about these teachings, if you practice these practices with sincerity and with earnest, and you do it consistently over time, what you're doing is you're changing the whole system, the whole conditioning that has resulted in these issues that you're suffering from. Do you understand that?
But if you're directing your energy purposefully, that's doing.
Well, see, we don't have time for me to digress into this again. I know.
Why did you bring that up?
That's okay. I know that that's the way it occurs. That's the way it appears. This is the worst and the biggest illusion and delusion, is the illusion and delusion that you are a doer, that you're doing something. In reality, over time, you have to start to apply these teachings, whether you see it yet or not. Whether you see it yet or not. And the teachings say, yes, it seems as though you're the doing, but everything you do is coming from a source other than you. The simple explanation is that it's coming from your conditioning and it's coming from your DNA. Everything that you think comes from your conditioning and your DNA, and everything that you think precludes what you do, doesn't it? And you have nothing to say about what you think. Therefore, you must not have anything to say about what you do. That's what the evidence shows us. And that's what science agrees upon, by the way. They don't make a big fuss about it because they figure people are crazy enough, let's not contribute to that. Because the way people hear that is that's crazy making, isn't it? To think about the idea that you have no free will is crazy making, because then it's like, you know, I put all my eggs in the basket of that I am going to develop my ability to do things that will make a difference. I put all my eggs in that basket. They told me that's how to live my life. That's what they taught me in school. And I did that the best that I could for most of my life, and I spent a lot of time and energy, decades and decades doing that, and now you're telling me that's not real. That's not true. Yeah, so that's a very hard thing to swallow, right? But if it is true and it is real and you never heard it and nobody ever told you that, and you live the rest of your life, right? Live the rest of your life as an ignorant, limited, conditioned, blind human being, that wouldn't be a good thing. So if you hear about this, even though the first way it occurs to you is that this doesn't make any sense, I can't understand it. It doesn't make any, everything is so different than that in the world that I live in, I can't understand that. I got that. But if you pursue it and you keep looking at it and you keep looking at the examples and you keep looking at the evidence, gradually you can start to at least let go of the death grip that you have on these misunderstandings. And as you do that, you'll begin to see, oh, that doesn't mean that I have to be different. No, all it means is I have to understand where everything is really coming from. That's all. And if I do understand it and I keep living my life consistent with that, and I'm feeling more peaceful, and I am happier, my relationships are working more, and I'm not afraid, well, duh. Who the hell cares what the absolute self-righteous truth is if you practice something that produces exactly the result that you want as a human being, which is to be happy, peaceful, and relaxed, is it not? So, just keep coming back here. I'll hammer you into shape. It's like, what was the famous artist? I think it was Michelangelo, that said you just keep carving away the stone that's not the real thing, carving away the stone that's not the statue, and then you're left with the statue. That's this process. I'm trying to take away the lie. I'm trying to take the lies out of your conditioning, right? So that what is real, that is already there, can be seen and can be experienced. That's what this is.
So when Christine had her accident, that wasn't Christine doing that. That was an outside source.
That was the outside source.
The outside source based on her.
And it's not even outside. That was the source. It's everywhere all the time.
So based on her conditioning, her DNA, all of that, it was just going to happen.
Sure. Sure. It is actually possible to study the way things occur and to see that if you study the way things occur, you can start to see how things happen that happen out of the thing that happened before it. That's what's actually happening. There's always something happens before it that results in the next thing, then something happens there that results in the next thing. And if you follow that, it goes to infinity. There is no source in that understanding of it, right? But the source that is the understanding of it is non-dual, is non-duality, that there is only one thing here, and that thing here, when you boil off the bullshit, when you boil all the bullshit off, that one thing here is, you could call it consciousness, you could call it awareness, you could call it God, you could call it the unified field, you could call it cosmic law. None of that, whatever the word is that you call it, doesn't matter. What matters is that you recognize the truth. And that's non-dual. Okay, I'll let you go.
The movie was already in the can. I wish I watched the movie.